But in 2012, after I sold that other company, my wife and I are sitting there, and I'm too young to retire, so we said, nobody's doing anything to advance this technology. So I put together a wish list. I finally had the money, and I could do it, and I could build the technology I wanted. And so in 2012, we built out the BrainTap, and I started helping doctors create what I called brain wellness or brain fitness in their practice.
Behind the practice.
Welcome to this week's episode of Behind the Practice. I'm Katie Brinkley, and today we are so fortunate to be sitting down with Patrick Porter. Patrick, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, and there's so many ways that we can take this conversation. I'm really excited to talk to you about BrainTap, but before we even dive into what that is, you've had quite a transformation over the past year. I know that you recently lost 60 pounds.
Yep.
So let's talk about how not only what you're doing is changing other people's lives, but how you've also been able to experience that transformation.
Yeah, well, when you're in this field for as long as I've been, 40 years, and then you get a diagnosis that says your PSA is an 8, and they want to cut into you, and I'm not for that at all. And then I read about what the side effects are of that procedure. I'm like, no way, I'm not interested in those things. So I said, give me 3 months. And what I did is I researched a friend of mine, Dr. Tom Seeger. He wrote a book called Uncommon Cold. And so the first thing I started implementing, I had a cold plunge in my office, but I would use it very rarely because it just wasn't convenient. But I bought one for my home so that I could do it every morning. And I started doing contrast therapy first. So I get up in the morning first thing, no coffee first thing in the morning. That's the worst thing you can do for your brain because it crushes your cortisol curve. You should have enough norepinephrine, dopamine, and cortisol on your own. You want your brain, the world's greatest pharmacy, to activate. You don't want coffee to activate it. Now, I love coffee, so 2 hours later I'll have a cup of coffee, but not first thing in the morning. And when you get into the cold plunge, that gets your nervous system going, gets it activated, gets the norepinephrine you need and everything to get going. And so that's number one. And then I do my BrainTap meditation to get my brain up, and I typically do a TM meditation with it because I've been doing that for years. And and so I'll put on one of the gamma sessions and train my brain to that level. And then after that, depending upon every other day, I'm going to be doing some kind of physical workout that's strenuous. I use an EMS suit called Vision Body. And that made all the difference too, because when I travel, I can't bring my plunge with me. I can't bring my sauna with me, but I can bring that suit. So now, no excuses. Every other day I'm doing some kind of physical workout. And with that type of biohacking suit, I'm recruiting 97% of my muscle. So, and thanks to a friend of mine, the queen of biohacking, Dr. Laura Leva, she said, you need to start using that because I was working out. I've always been physically active, but I just couldn't get my body to burn fat. Now my metabolism is through the roof, and I started doing intermittent fasting and pretty much eating the good amount of good proteins, and a lot of fresh food and things that I knew to do anyway because I ran a weight loss franchise. But I wasn't doing once I sold the franchise.
Yep.
My whole life I'd always been at great weight until like 7 years ago. Because I was traveling, pretty successful at what we're doing, and I was just thinking about my brain, but you got to think about your body too.
Yeah, it's so true. And well, actually, you mentioned BrainTap when you were talking to us about your transformation. How did BrainTap begin?
Well, BrainTap started out of what happened before in my life. My dad was a Silva instructor, a Silva meditation instructor. So I grew up doing something called the Silva sound. In that meditation practice, you'd go to level, which is alpha. And so they had music they'd play in the background, which is called the Silva sound, which now we'd call it isochronic tones in alpha generation. So I'd always been into the sound part of it. And then through a series of what I like to call God winks, I got set up with a company called Light and Sound Research here in Scottsdale, Arizona, actually. And I was their researcher, and we invented the very first portable light and sound machine. Now, before that, we didn't have light, but we were researching how candle meditation changed brain function. So we're using a lot of biofeedback at that time. There was no neurofeedback. Everybody today thinks everything, we always had EEG, or we didn't. We couldn't measure what the brain was doing, but we could measure what the body was doing. Is our respiration changing? Is our heart rate changing? Is our skin temperature changing? These are all things that tell us whether they're in fight or flight or in parasympathetic. So I was hired as their researcher. I went to school first for electronics, but because of helping my dad with the seminars and things like that, I got a lot into psychology. Then I got a degree in psychology.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor of psychology. In that process, we want to know, how can we send something home with our clients? Because especially in my business of addiction therapy and things like that, they only see me for an hour a week. What are they doing all the rest of the time? So
there's a lot of hours like that.
So we had a big machine. It was called a Sills. It was $10,000. This was back in the 80s. So, but nobody can afford that. Back then, 10,000, like 30,000 today. And so they built a little prototype, and I started providing that to my clients. And it blew up into getting an award at the Consumer Electronics Show and all this. But think of it like the old stereos where you'd stack things on top of each other. There's a lot of wires. But in 2012, after I sold that other company, my wife and I are sitting there, and I'm too young to retire. So we said, nobody's doing anything to advance this technology. So I put together a wish list. I finally had the money, and I could do it, and I could build the technology I wanted. And so in 2012, we built out the BrainTap, and I started helping doctors create what I called brain wellness or brain fitness in their practice. And we still keep evolving it. We're on the 6th generation of it. The next unit that comes out is going to be a version 2 because we have some really major upgrades coming.
So for people who maybe that are listening right now, they're like, I'm kind of familiar with BrainTap, or maybe they've never heard of BrainTap. Just explain how it helps someone's nervous system.
Okay. Well, right now, as we're sitting here, your nervous system has been changing every 40 seconds based on your mirror neurons. MIT proved this. You're never the same person. Your cells are changing at a rate of 50 million cells per second. So all of this activity is going on without your awareness. It's happening through your subconscious, or what I like to call your other than conscious. So this field that we call it, and this isn't something they have to believe. This is something, go to NIH and look at NIH, type in biofield. Yeah. There's a field of energy that's around us all, and our cells are actually playing into it. So a lot of the things here, even at the show we're at right now, are really working on the field. Mm-hmm. They're not working on the biological system. The biological system is like the second part of it. The first part is the energy system, what you call the electron transport chain. So this is how the cells get mitochondrial energy. So we're going to use light, sound, and vibration to do that. On every cell sits something called a chromophore. It's a little battery, and it absorbs energy. So in sound, you might go to a conference, a party or a celebration or a conference even, and you didn't really want to go, but they started playing all your favorite music. Pretty soon you're tapping your toe, you're dancing. The person brought you, hey, I didn't think you wanted to come to this. Yeah. Well, they're playing all my favorite music. That's because your cells actually converted that energy into usable ATP at the cellular level. But we're doing that on steroids because we're bringing it right in through retinal flashing and through the ears. So the reason for the ears is all the blood in your body goes through the ears every 3 to 4 minutes. So if we're going to bring light into the brain is actually temperature-wise is controlled by the blood in the ears. So it's all going in and out. So it's kind of like if you're at the end of a river, there's a community that we want to feed, we got to bring it down the river. So in the way light works is the hemoglobin absorbs that light, it carries it to the cell that's about to die, apoptosis. That cell will receive that energy, then it basically recreates the Krebs cycle. It starts it up again and you get a nascent cell. So you now have your cell returns back to back to basically baseline. Yeah. That cell begins to function like a new cell. So we can raise the energy of the brain. So we have measurement tools that do that. We have like the NeuroCheck, but we can also measure it with like the WAVI or any other technologies like that. We can show, like in our study we did, some of the things it does that we've studied is like with dementia, with our Saving Your Brain study, which is now a full book, somebody can read the whole protocol. We took women, 55, 65, non-meditators. Within 6 weeks, they were all taken off the dementia scale. That study is now in a bigger study in Seminole College. We have 56 people through it. By the time we get their brain voltage over 7, they no longer have dementia symptoms. So it's a voltage problem.
Yeah.
You know, when they say healing is voltage, there's a good book out there called that. And that's real. That's the reality. If the cells don't have the right voltage. So there's a lot of reasons we don't have the right voltage, you know, our toxic world, our toxic thoughts, you know, sedentary lifestyle. So what BrainTap's going to do is going to get the neurons wiring and firing around new thoughts, new ideas, new concepts, and really just repairing the brain from the inside out.
So glad that you brought up some of the research that's happened with BrainTap. And it's been researched over 72 times.
Yes.
And so talk about that a little bit.
So when you think about it, there's 7 studies going on right now around the world at major universities like Ames, Bhopal, in Italy, in Spain, in Brazil. In Brazil, we're doing an ADD study that one of the largest universities in the world, 490,000 students. They're getting ready to launch it through the whole student network, because at Seminole College, we did a study where our golfers were national champions 4 years in a row, but what they noticed was they had the highest GPA in the school. So we did a school-wide GPA study, and we raised the GPA up 1 point just by them doing once a day a 10-minute session, and we call it brain prep. So we're always seeing what's the least amount we can do to get the biggest change, because so many people want wholesale changes. But the real thing is, how do we get the body to start doing what the body's designed to do? We're designed to learn, develop, grow, and improve our function. But the problem is the past gets in the way, stress gets in the way, trauma gets in the way. So you need to take that time for recovery. So we do a lot with sports. If they go onto BrainTapSports.com, there's a section in there that has Tom Brady's group, the TBRX, because Tom Brady's one of the big users of BrainTap, because of recovery. We're gonna stress our body out. We're gonna stress our brain out. We're not gonna change that. What we need to do is build more capacity. So we're always trying to prove out, how can we build more capacity into the brain and nervous system? Because it's not just the brain in your head, it's your whole nervous system.
I mean, the golf study, that's probably was pretty mind-blowing.
Yes.
What's another study that you saw that really was it surprised you?
Well, the Saving Your Brain study surprised us, but the one we did in Brazil where we went against opioids.
Oh, yeah, talk about that.
The technology was actually designed for pain clinics first, because we were using skin temperature and respiration. When people are in pain, when you're in a high stress state, you have more pain. So if we could teach people through biofeedback how to reduce their body's stress, they would reduce their pain meds. But then opioids came out. So we function in the Unisol labs in Brazil, this large university. We did a study, because most people don't realize opioids are approved for 4 weeks of use. If you use them over 4 weeks, you're abusing. And I have a saying, you can't have the pill without the skill. A friend of mine, Joe Quita told me that. And so what we did is we said, okay, they wouldn't let us do it without opioids.
Yeah.
So everybody in the study took opioids for 4 weeks. At the end of 4 weeks, our group, we said, okay, you're off opioids, you're going to start doing BrainTap. Now, they did BrainTap while they were on the opioid. So they were learning the skill of the pill, because the pill was just teaching the body what to do. Our group, after 4 weeks, never took another opioid. The other group, after 6 months, is still taking opioids, because their brain got dependent upon the pill. It didn't learn the skill that the pill was trying to provide. So what we're saying is, if you have to give them the pill for short term, okay, give them the pill.
Yeah.
It's not meant for a lifetime. It's going to kill their internal organs. It's not designed for that. So we're trying to show the medical world it's okay. It's great. It's great for chronic care, but it's not great for health care. It's not great for longevity care. So people get confused. They think our healthcare practitioners are healthcare practitioners. Most of them are not. Most of them are sick care practitioners. There's if you have a natural medicine practitioner, that's a healthcare practitioner. Most of our medical practitioners, those are sick care practitioners. We need to change that. Somebody needs to go to our Congress and say, look, you're confusing everybody. These are not healthcare practitioners.
Yeah.
I love it when I had a client come into the clinic and she said, I asked on a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate your health? She said 10. She was on 17 different pharmaceuticals. I said, why did you say you had a 10 if you're on 10 pharmaceuticals? She goes, well, that's why I'm on. I said, no, that's like driving a car and you put a black tape over your engine light. You're just pretending you have good health. Yeah. You are destroying your health, because listen to the studies of all these pharmaceuticals. What happens? At the end of the day, the downside of taking these you're going to die. Mm-hmm. I know that firsthand, because my grandma got sent home from the hospital. She was a nurse practitioner in the 60s, and she was self-medicating. She said, we got to send you home. You're going to die. You're toxic poisoning. She lived to be 93 because she got off all of her pharmaceuticals. Yeah. Because they're good in short doses. They're incredible.
Yeah.
But in long-term use, they're terrible.
Yep.
You've got to get off them. I'm not saying anybody listening to get off your pharmaceuticals, go to your medical doctor. That's my disclaimer. But the reality is that whatever that pill's doing, your physiology is designed to do. Let's get your physiology doing and get off the pill.
So someone's listening and they're saying, okay, well, are you saying that meditation is going to cure me? Because I've tried meditation and it doesn't work.
Yeah, only 5% of people meditate. Now, in our studies, we've studied over 30,000 brains. Most people, when they meditate on their own, they don't realize when you close your eyes, you shut down 30% of your brain, and your default mode network starts to go crazy, what the Dalai Lama calls your monkey mind. So, no, I'm not saying meditate like that. That doesn't work. And there's a reason why only 5% of people meditate, because they don't know how to control the monkey mind. What we proved with BrainTap, with brainwave entrainment technology, we can put the default mode network at bay. We can get you to relax. We can keep the brain operating. Once you learn, after 3 to 6 weeks of doing this, now you can meditate on your own. But you haven't trained that part of the brain. And I don't have time to go learn with a guru for 30 years.
Yeah.
I want to do it today. So I'm saying use brainwave entrainment. It's nothing, you don't need to be cured.
Yeah.
Your brain knows what to do. What we need to do is create the field of energy, and you'll heal. Your body's designed to heal. Your brain's designed to heal. I'm not going to do anything, but we need to get, just like if I had seeds to plant in my garden, I don't need to do anything to those seeds. That's you. What I need to do is make the soil right, give you adequate sunlight and water. You do the rest.
Yeah.
So your nervous system knows what to do. The problem is the field isn't right for you. So we need to change the field. That's where the brainwave entrainment comes in, is changing that field.
So if someone's listening right now and they're saying, man, this sounds like maybe something I need to incorporate into my life, and where can they learn more about BrainTap? How can they see if it's available near them? Talk to us a little bit.
They can buy my newest book. I've written 10 books. My newest book, Brain Fitness Blueprint, has a big plan in it. You can get that anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever, or online. That has a 30-day plan to get started. Or they can go directly to BrainTap.com. We have a 14-day free trial.
Amazing.
And what that means is, don't take my word for it. We always tell people, don't believe anything I'm saying. Give yourself 14 days, because 90% of people that do that get their best sleep. And with 2/3 of the world not sleeping, that's the first thing to fix. Let's get you sleeping again. Once you start sleeping, then you can look in buying the headset. But you can start right now with your own earbuds, your own phone, 14 days free. If you don't like it, just cancel it within 14 days. Our audience, we have 120,000 users, and we only have less than 1% of the people that ever quit, and they use it 27 times a month because they're getting use out of it. They're getting a benefit from it, but you'll never know until you go there and try it. So what I say is suspend your disbelief long enough to get over to BrainTap.com, download the free app, doesn't cost you anything, and then just try it for yourself. And if you could measure your sleep, that's where the real magic happens. So let's get you sleeping again, and then you can start improving everything else.
Oh, I love it. This has been such a great conversation. I can't thank you enough for joining me on the show today. I'd love to have you come on again, and I feel like we just saw the tip of the iceberg of everything.
Yeah.
So thank you
reach
again.
Out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Behind the Practice is produced by Next Step Social and Podcasting and hosted by Katie Brinkley and Sean Quintero. A special thank you to our guests today. This episode was recorded live at the Boston BioLife Functional Longevity Summit. A special thank you to the team that helped make this podcast happen.